Joining me for tonight's Lone Liberal Rumble are Patrick Hedger, Policy Director for American Encore, and Horace Cooper, Conservative Commentator and Senior Fellow with the National Center for Public Policy Research, who's not going to Hawaii like Patrick is.
Unfortunately. That's right. I'm ready to get out of here.
We should
There's
all
no
justice
in the world.
We should all be going to Hawaii.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
or to Cuba.
No.
Right? It's warm, it's comfortable, so, you know, I don't
know about comfortable. Look at how that guy Ross came out of there. He didn't look comfortable. He's missing some teeth.
Yeah, being in jail can do that too.
Yeah.
It's just not a good thing.
And there's all those cuts and scrapes from riding in the 1950s cars too. So you know,
that's right.
Pre-seatbelt and all. I know how you feel about that.
I was just thinking, yeah, there's no Ralph Nader. So the argument that is being made, if I get this right, is by Marco Rubio and others, is that the Cuban government is communist. B, they're essentially a dictatorship. They don't have elections. It's run by, it's a command economy, all that kind of thing. And so my question is, if this is our criteria, that we don't negotiate with people who are communists and who, put dissidents in prison and who don't hold elections, when are we going to stop trading with China? When are we going to stop importing clothing made in Vietnam? And when are we going to stop buying oil from Saudi Arabia? All three of these countries have worse human rights records than Cuba.
Oh, no, that's not true. I was working with you all the way till you got to that conclusion. It is not.
Cuba does not kill people for their body organs like China does. Cuba does not behead people in the public square every Friday like Saudi Arabia does.
Kills people for their public opinions, but
yes,
few and far between. Nothing compared to what China is doing.
And has been doing it far longer, and has been doing it
longer than China? Are you old enough to remember the Cultural Revolution?
Inconsistencies in American foreign policy isn't an excuse to continue to be inconsistent and expand upon that. And the difference between the real difference with Cuba is that
foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds.
We have to remember that this is the nation. This person, the Castros, personally begged Khrushchev to launch a nuclear attack on the United States. These are the same men. Well, Robert McNamara was the defense secretary, met with Castro, and Castro admitted to asking Khrushchev, do it, launch them. Yeah. So these are the same guys that wanted to orchestrate.
I have no knowledge. I can't back you up on that. But B,
Fog of War documentary, and in retrospect, Robert McNamara's book, he says that.
That's even in Wikipedia now. I mean, it's everywhere that when given the opportunity to advocate for the nuclear destruction of the United States of America, Castro wasn't just a lean yes.
Wikipedia he was it's real.
I said it's not just. It's
everywhere. Who would be stupid enough to say, yes, please set off a nuclear bomb 90 miles from our shore?
Well, that's
Fidel Castro.
That's what he was willing to do, and then that's what Castro himself admitted.
So we're supposed to continue punishing
the missiles that were going to be located on the island. That was its purpose, to launch 90 miles from our shore.
So we're supposed to continue to punish the people of Cuba because 50 years ago, was it? 40, it was 5.
How are we punishing the people of Cuba?
50, I mean, 3 years ago.
How is normalizing trade relationships with the Cuban government going to help the people of Cuba? Cuba has normalized trade relationships with the European Union, which has a comparable GDP to the United States. They've been trading for 40 years, and the conditions haven't improved in Cuba. So basically, emboldening the Cuban dictatorship with increased American wealth is not going to help the people of Cuba. It's elite capture. It's a foreign policy problem.
This is an extremely dangerous precedent.
Where you help people in power that can afford to capture the goods and resources that come into their country. That's all that's going to happen.
A brutal dictator.
Just a second. Trading with Europe. First of all, Cuba basically doesn't have anything to sell. If you want to get foreign currency into your country,
you don't have anything.
You've got to have something to sell. Now that they've discovered oil off the coast of Cuba, suddenly we're interested. Maybe
China's interested. China's been drilling off the coast of Cuba for a couple of years now. I mean, still things aren't improving for Cubans.
Wouldn't it be a better thing? Wouldn't it be a better thing for us to engage Cuba and the people of Cuba?
This is setting a terrible, extremely bad precedent.
You think the Castros are going to live forever?
No. Well,
I don't think we should reward them while they're alive with the behavior that they've engaged in.
Both these guys are dead within a decade. Why now? Wait until there's a post-Castro regime.
Because over the last 5 years, this country has gone through tremendous changes. They've liberalized their economy. They have,
That is
Horace. Have you been down
ridiculous.
there?
No, but I can read, and I can see the international media coverage. And by the way, they hold an American for trying to give people access to the internet. That's how broad-minded they are. These are brutal thugs.
I thought the whole pitch, the whole neoconservative pitch, the reason why it was, take down Saddam Hussein, all this stuff, the whole neoconservative pitch, the end of time, Hayakawa and all these other books and pitches and sales pitches, Paul Wolfowitz and whatnot, is that capitalism, when countries have contact with capitalism, and particularly with the United States' capitalism, it's so vibrant, it's so successful, it's so effective that people just say, I want more of that. It's like everybody down there wants an iPod.
They have contact with Canada's capitalism, and there's not a Tim Hortons in downtown Havana.
Canada's too far away to have easy commerce with this island. As is Europe. They're 90 miles from the U.S. coast.
What, so China's too far from the United States to have commerce with us? I mean, that argument doesn't make any sense.
We have a pile of money.
Let's concede your straw man example of what neocons say is true. I never signed off on that. It was my view that if you are going to brutalize your own people and be party to trying to topple our country or even engage in a nuclear holocaust with us, we ought to treat you like an enemy. We haven't gotten any concessions because of what we've done. We have set a terrible precedent.
That is not established. We blew this so badly. I mean, Castro, when he did...
today's actions blew this so badly.
No, in 1959, we blew it so badly. Richard Nixon was in charge of the Cuba desk when he was vice president of the United States. Fidel Castro did his revolution in Cuba. He came to the United States, came to Nixon, and he said, hey, I want to work with you guys. I tried out for the New York Yankees. I'm all in favor of being part of America. And Nixon said no, blew him off. So then he turns to Khrushchev and says, hey, let's make a deal. I mean, let's just fix this problem that Richard Nixon created.
I'm hungry. My children are sick. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go with crazed killers and side with them because you didn't help me because I was hungry and sick. I'm sorry. That doesn't justify the behavior. And the brutality that they've engaged in since that time
is nothing compared to Saudi Arabia, is nothing compared to China, is nothing compared to Vietnam.
Again, and then that shouldn't justify doing more wrong. Okay, what we should have been done.
So you are saying that we should right now stop our trade relations with China. Is that what you're saying?
No. But neither is.
Are you saying we should stop our trade relations with Saudi Arabia?
Neither is Democrat.
Beheading every Friday?
Neither is Democrat Robert Menendez in the United States Senate. He's the one that said that this was an unprecedented exchange.
He's the one that called them Patrick Hedger. Two wrongs don't make a right. I'm paraphrasing, actually.
I'm not today, and he's right.
I would just appreciate us being consistent with the foreign policy that was actually set up by President Clinton, where they signed the Libertad Act, which kind of cleaned up some ambiguities with our relationships with Cuba, what we would do with people that we found trying to get to the United States from Cuba.
This was just the wet foot, dry foot thing.
And essentially, what they also said was that liberalizing commercial and trade ties and diplomatic ties with Cuba should be used in order to leverage deep concessions to get democratic rights to the Cuban people in a post-Castro regime.
What is awakening Cuba is the fact that the rest of the world is starting to use this as a major tourist destination. It just astonishes me that you guys are holding a position that I, as an American, that you as Americans should be forbidden from traveling to another country.
No, I just
think... You really believe that?
I didn't want people to go to East Germany either.
You didn't?
No, I did not.
I went to East Germany.
I said I didn't want them to be allowed to go to East Germany. They're our enemy, and absolutely
East Germany,
our enemy.
East Germany was a repressive...
A wonderful place, right?
No, but my going there and the other Americans who went there helped to end that regime.
No, Ronald Reagan challenged it
when George W. Bush or George Herbert Walker Bush was president when the wall fell.
Directly.
Our trade deals, and you pointed out Saudi Arabia, they've emboldened the regime of Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And it hasn't weakened it.
So
why are we going to embolden
Castro? Actions is what he's saying.
Because
what
these
Patrick
guys are moving, because Cuba over the last 5 years has moved in the appropriate direction. Saudi Arabia is moving in the other direction.
In 2013, just
Saudi
last
Arabia
year,
is funding ISIS.
Just last year, human rights groups raised alarms that politically motivated arrests and executions in Cuba were on the rise.
On the rise.
That was last year. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm just
from this to this, whereas in China it's from this to this.
We have to move
in
forward
Saudi Arabia,
with Cuba
it's from this
at
to
some
this.
point.
In Vietnam, it's
We have to move forward with Cuba at some point. Nobody's disagreeing with that.
You just don't want to move forward as long as it's a Democrat.
You're not listening to his point.
As long as it's the Castros.
You're sending the signal to the other folks.
Okay.
They can continue doing what they're doing.
Right.
There will be no consequence.
I think we've all had our say here. Senator